So we are learning Likkutei Sichot, volume 4, in the Sichot for Matot. And if I remember correctly, we're on section 5. Yeah. So the last thing we saw was that there's Bina and Chochmah in each person, there's understanding and wisdom. Understanding by its nature, which is very intellectual, should have limits. It should have prishut. It should refrain from going too far. Why? Because you get into speculation, into things that are not true, and so on. And from the side of Bina, you do need the vows. So you need that aspect of being able to limit yourself. But from this aspect of Bina, and Bina is in Atzilus, so Chochmah, of wisdom, which is in Atzilus, you don't need that. And there, it's actually the opposite, that if you refrain from looking, by the way, where do we see that somebody refrained from looking, and it was considered a sin for him? It was Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayal ki sar lirot. Sar lirot, what does it mean? Sar means two things. It means both, lasur means to go, so he came to see what this vision of the burning bush was. But sar also means to refrain, like asur. So the Medrash says that later on, after the sin of the golden calf, Hashem said to him, Moshe said to Hashem, Hareini nat kvodecha, show me yourself. Whatever that means, kvodecha, your glamour, your honor. And Hashem said to him, you can only see my backside, you can't see my front side. So the Medrash says this was retribution for his not having wanted to see when Hashem gave him the opportunity. So Moshe was in a state of bittul, and he should have known that when you are in a state of bittul, you should look. There is a time, melech be'ofil techazen einecha. There is a time to see Hashem. There is a time not to turn my face from Hashem. Even because if Hashem is showing himself to me, that's his decision. And that means that he wants me to look at him. It sounds strange for us, but it's not that difficult to understand, because when you translate it into psychology, it means that if an opportunity is being given for you to do a great thing, for instance, something that doesn't sound like it's from your stature, it's not much higher than you, but the opportunity is being presented from above. Like, for instance, they tell you, would you like to be a witness at Rav Ginsburg's daughter's wedding? Okay. I had this happen to me 5 times, or 4 times, I'm not sure. What am I doing there? But he asked me, I was there, he asked me, so go do it. That's like a little thing. A bigger thing is that the Rebbe would call someone. Like, imagine he called Groner when he was still a bacher, and he said, can you take care of this and this for me? And Groner would have said, who am I to do something for this great man, even though he wasn't the Rebbe yet. So, but that's what he wants. So do it. So that means don't put limits when you're going to do a good thing. If the world of Atzilus is falling down in your head, accept it. That this is what it is now. There was something like that with the Tzemach Tzedek, right? That the Alter Rebbe said to him, come, I'll give you a bracha and you'll get an incredible jump, an incredible boost in your learning. And the Tzemach says, no, I'll do it myself. Why? Because later on he regretted it. It's the same thing. It's the same story again and again and again. So from the side of bittul, meaning of doing a good deed, there should not be reflection. You shouldn't say, who am I to so-and-so. It's not connected. That's what the Baal Shem Tov says, that when it comes to doing a mitzvah, the person has to say, there's no one else here. If this mitzvah is now, I'm the one who sees it, that means that I'm the one who has to do it. And no one else is going to do it. We talked about this in relation to Pinchas also. And it could be that, again, that Hashem is giving you the opportunity because it really belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anyone else. You wanted to say something all along. You looked like you were holding something back.
I was saying you could argue against that, because when Noah is 9 million men, and his 2 sons came to cover him up. They turned their faces so as not to see.
No.
He said, well, they're supposed to look at him to make sure they're covering him for it, but they didn't.
No,
We never always look
no,
away. It's not allowed.
that's not part of the mitzvah. On the contrary, and then there's the Rebbe Sichot in volume. Which means, why did they not see his erva, his mevushim? The Rebbe explains it because it means that when you're looking at someone else, how do I know that if I see something negative in someone else, that it's a reflection of myself? It's because I don't see a negative thing, I see something that needs to be fixed. If I see something that's negative, says the Rebbe, that's what the Baal Shem Tov did not mean. He meant only if you only see what needs to be corrected. But if you see that the other person is naked, he's wrong, there's something bad about him, so that means it's a reflection of yourself. That's how he explains it there. That's a symbolic explanation. But it still means that they weren't warranted in looking at it. There's nothing that says you have to look at it. You can cover him without... and anyway, they knew that they had covered him properly. Because afterwards they looked back. And it says that they went backwards until the place where they needed to cover, and then they flipped. Right? We talked about this once. Anyway. So that is the two, that is Chochmah and Bina. Now he says, פרישות שבנדרים אינה רק משום שהדברים המותרים בהם הוא שקוע עלולים להביאו להיכשל בדברים האסורים, כי משום שעצם ההשתקעות בענייני היתר אינה רצויה. So actually we saw this, I think. Right? So it says it's not only because you should refrain from things because you might fall into doing something negative. That's not the only reason to make a vow. Making a vow is also because you don't want to be too immersed in the physical aspect. Even though it's inyanei heter, even though these are permissible things, but just even to be immersed in the physical aspect of life too much, you begin to believe that the world stands in and of itself. I just heard this morning, early in the morning, I had to drive somewhere, so I put something on the phone to listen to. And I like listening to Mordechai Shriki. You don't know him because you're a Lubavitcher. Lubavitchers don't know anything about what's going on outside the rest of the Torah world. Yeah, he's a Moroccan. He's Mordechai Shriki. He's a tremendous Talmid Chacham. And his specialty is Ramchal. I'm not crazy about the Ramchal for a lot of reasons, but that's me. But I like listening to him. And if you enjoy he's very calm, he has this half French, half Moroccan accent. And he's a very, very sweet person to listen to. So I listen to him quite a lot. Quite a lot is like about half an hour a week. So he was talking about something in Derech Hashem, which is the Ramchal's popular book. And he said something amazing. He said, I didn't think about it this way. He said, the whole reason that there's Seder Ishtalshlus, says the Ramchal, is so that people would be able to understand. Okay. Meaning, why did God create the world in such a way that you can at least imagine that evolution happened? It's wrong, but you can at least imagine it. Okay. Why? Why did He create it this way? He says, because if He would not have created it this way, we would have no understanding about the world. Because that's how the human mind functions. Granted, Shtalshlus is the lowest level of functioning of the human mind. There's Slapshus above that, and Shra even higher. But 90% of the people, that's what they understand. Who is evolution popular with? Children. They make books on dinosaurs and this and that. Oh, this is so interesting. And they developed from a dinosaur into a monkey and then into a person. So it says if it wouldn't have been... Now you see it, forget about the big scale evolution. But little scale evolution. You have a woman who's not pregnant, she becomes pregnant, and slowly you see that the stomach is built. You understand that the child, when it started out, was very small and it grew. People have seen, unfortunately, fetuses have been aborted, so miscarried. So you see that it's not fully developed. You see that there are stages of development. In fact, it was an old theory which still holds a lot of water in science. I don't remember what it's called. It's something it's the correlation between the small and the great. That human evolution follows the same thing as fetal evolution, meaning fetal development. That you see the different stages and the forms. So it's an incredible statement, because what are you saying? Hashem wanted people to be able to understand that He's running the world. But what happened? Instead of taking this knowledge that I can understand how the world is developing, they took it and they threw Hashem out. They threw Hashem out of the equation. Even if they would have been left with the way that the ancients said this. He's the power of all powers. Really, that's what it means. He's the power behind everything. He's the first mover. Even that would have been better. But the way that they take it is naturalistic, completely materialistic. Strict materialism means you don't need God. You don't need anything. Nature can run itself. Nature created itself. It has no need for anything. So that you get steeped in when you're too materialistic. The more materialistic you are, the more you see the world this way. This is a plague today. It's a plague not just by Jews, via the rest of the world. It's a plague by Jews. There's so many Jews today that unfortunately do not feel that Hashem is even the one who started evolution. We don't need Him. It's not interesting. Where does this come from? It comes from this feeling that even in my life, I don't need Hashem. I'm perfectly happy with my car and my house and my this and my that. When do we begin to need Hashem? When suddenly he feels bad. He starts getting ill. He gets older. And so you see a lot of people, when they get older, they suddenly become, unfortunately, more superstitious. They don't even become believers. They usually fall into some kind of superstition. I'll do this, I'll do that. Some of them don't. Some of them keep their wits about them, and they don't want to hear about anything. And this is just the way nature is, and that's the end of the story. Okay? But this is a real problem. So נעשה אצלו העולם למציאות התופסת מקום, הפך ההרגש שאין עוד מלבדו. But all the more so if you want to feel that everything you're looking at is godly, everything is Hashem. You can't have that if you're steeped in materialism. So for that reason, you need to put barriers up in the form of vows, in the forms of refraining, of pulling back from the material world, in order to retain that type of consciousness that Hashem is everything. מזה מובן שגם מעלת החוכמה שברוכה לבטל עלינו אינה רק בכך שהביטול שבחוכמה משפיע עליו שדבר איסור יהיה מופרך אצלו, אלא גם שבדבר הגשמי עצמו בעוז הגדול יורגש האלוקות שבו. It also works in relation to the Chokhmah. We said the Chokhmah doesn't need the vows. So it's not just that the Chokhmah is able to make the vow unnecessary. That's the negative side of it. The positive side of it is that you have Chokhmah. It means that you see godliness in everything. Everything that you deal with. In other words, when you have bittul, getting into your car to dry becomes a divine exercise. Taking a shower becomes an exercise in meeting Hashem. Because everything can be that way. But that's if you have bittul, if you have chokhmah. If you're only working with your intellect, so you're limited. You can only feel, I don't want to immerse myself too much within materiality. But if you're working with bittul, so that's called b'chol dorecha deo. Then you can come to a state where everything that you do, and everything could, and that very material thing that the person is dealing with at this moment, that becomes godly. והביאור בזה, דובר כבר על ההבדל שבין חוכמה לבינה, שהם בדוגמת אב ואם. So the explanation of this is, he says there's another level here, that we've already spoken about the difference between Chokhmah and Bina, who are like the father and the mother. Bina היא אם המידות, היא מהווה מקור למידות שורש הנבראים, ולכן תופס העולם מקום לגבי דרגת הבינה. Because Bina is the mother of the attributes, of the heart, of the emotional attributes. It's the root of creation. Bina is in creation. So creation means that there's something separate. Emotions, by definition, mean that there's something separate. What's the example? Simple example. If I like ice cream, that's just me. Yeah? Doesn't mean that you like ice cream. But if I understand that 1 + 1 = 2, then if you understand it, we understand the same thing. In other words, you can't understand the opposite. You can't understand. You can't have a different understanding than me. You have to have the same understanding. You can say I have another understanding that maybe I don't, but that means that we just need to share so that I understand your. We may not agree because I think that there's a mistake in your understanding. If you would tell me 1 + 1 = 3, so I would say no, sir. We have to discuss this because you have a basic mistake here. So when it comes to intellect, the intellect by itself is more objective. But the emotions, what are you saying here? The midos, they are the world of separation. Each person has a different experience, a different emotional experience. You can't compare them. And you can't expect people to have the same emotional experience. They're different. Chokhmah היא אב המידות, כלומר שחוכמה עומדת בריחוק מהמידות, but the Father is separate from the world of creation. He's higher up. So even though He contributed to their creation, because you need both the Mother and the Father, but He's aloof. He's above it. כלומר שחוכמה עומדת בריחוק מהמידות, בכל שכן מן העולמות שנבראו על ידן. All the more so from the world that were created by them. He's also here alluding to the 7 days of creation, which correspond to the 7 midot. What was created in those 7 days? Some people will say, what was created in those 7 days is matter itself. No. Matter itself didn't need to be created. Like Rashi says, everything was created in the first moment. Everything, including everything. Everything you see here was created in the first moment. What were the 7 days for? What were they good for? They were good for creating what we call a feeling of separation within what was created. That's what the 7 days did. They imbued what was created at the first moment with the sense of being separate. And that Hashem did over 7 days. And there's no connection here to evolution. I mean, the people trying to show that the order of things happening in the 7 days is somewhat similar to what evolution claims, or cosmology. You start from light, but it breaks down very quickly because you get to the 4th day, and then you suddenly see that the sun and the moon were not created yet. What do you mean they weren't created yet? Of course they were created. They weren't really, the answer is they weren't a separate existence. They could not be told apart from the general light in the universe. It was like not a separate thing. They were not shining by themselves, the sun and the moon, when the moon still shone. That's a completely different thing. It's a completely different picture than science. Entirely different. Because we're not talking about the ontology of how things were created. We're talking about how things received the midos. On the first day, Chesed went in. Second day, Gvura went in. Third day, Tiferes went in. Each day imbued reality with one of the midos. That's really what happens in creation. Okay, in any case, so לגבי חוכמה, אין לעולם תפיסת מקום. As far as wisdom is concerned, חוכמה, so the world has no separate reality. Tfisat makom doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means it doesn't take up space. It doesn't take up space in the consciousness. It's not something separate. In the same way, what do you mean? It's here. It just doesn't take up separate space. It's just a part of Hashem, like everything else, like all the other worlds. לכן, מבחינת החוכמה קיים הרגש שהוא לבדו הוא ואין זולתו. From the point of view of Chokhmah, we've talked about this a lot, that you can open your eyes. If you can't daven Shmoneh Esrei with your eyes open and see that everything is Hashem, then you have to go back to Shema. And in Shema what we do is we close our eyes to make it easier, and we say, everything I'm going to see now when I open my eyes is Hashem. There's nothing else here. That's what I accept. It's hard for me to do it with my eyes open. So I close my eyes. And now I say everything I'm experiencing, everything. We talk about this a lot. That's seeing the Sovev. Seeing the Sovev means you don't need to open your eyes. You see through your eyes. Why can't you see through your eyes? If you close your eyes, you can't see. Have you ever had a problem seeing if you close your eyes? Exactly. The separateness is blocked, but I don't have a problem seeing. Seeing is in the sense of, I contemplate, I understand. So I don't want it to be something separate. But if you really, really want to do an exercise, try seeing through your closed eyelids. See what you see. And I think it's a very interesting exercise. It sounds crazy, but it's a real exercise. I don't know, sometimes it happens to people when they wake up, that they actually haven't opened their eyes yet, but they're already beginning to see. The brain has to be in a certain state for this to happen. But if you'll see, there's a lot of people. Anyway, won't tell you all the Kabbalist secrets. But one of their ideas, and we've talked about this, that you have to be in a state that's between being awake and being asleep. And when you're between being awake and being asleep, you see through the eyelids. You don't see the closed darkness because of the eyelids. You see something entirely different. The eye continues to see. The question is, what does it see? When you go to sleep, here the simple example of it is dreaming. When you're dreaming, you see. So you're not seeing the physical world, you're seeing something. So in the same way, you can see what the world looks like without the separation. So from the point of view of Chachma, it's only him and there's nothing else. לכן מבחינת הבינה, כיוון שהעולם תופס מקום לגביה, לאדם לפרוש מענייני העולם, שכן ענייני העולם שבהם הוא שקוע, עלולים לעשותו נפרד חס וחלילה מלכות. אבל מצד החוכמה, שאין העולם תופס מקום מבחינתה, יכול הוא לעסוק בענייני העולם, ואף על פי כן לא יעשו לנפרד, מאחר שאין לעולם תפיסת מקום אצלו. So from the point of view of Bina, everything is separated, so there you need the vowels, you need to refrain, you have to pull back. From the point of view of Chachma, you don't need that. So that's the end of this Sicha. The next one is interesting, he said it apparently at the same time, because there's no different, but the next Sicha is actually about the meaning of Menachem Av, and we won't learn it. What we'll try to do tomorrow is read all of Masei, because it'll be a nice supplement to what we learned from Masei yesterday. Okay, have a good day in Mivtzoyim.